Morning at Hasting Realtor headquarters. Outside, the sky hung low and gray, thick with the kind of clouds that threatened rain but hadn't committed yet. The city was silent in that slow-building way. No storms yet, but one was coming. Wind dragged dry leaves across the concrete like loose ends nobody had time to sweep up. Inside the Hasting Realtor boardroom, everything was immaculate and cold. A glass-paneled table stretched down the center of the room like a surgical instrument. Leather chairs, stiff with money, encircled it. The air smelled faintly of espresso and polished wood. Too clean, too precise. 12 men and women sat in tailored silence, their suits crisp, their smiles tight. No chatter. Just the rhythmic ticking of the heirloom wall clock, its brass hands inching toward inevitability. At the head of the table sat Salis Hasting, early 30s, olive skin, amber eyes dulled by routine. His posture was perfect, his charcoal suit cut like armor. He nodded once at the assistant by the door. The room dimmed slightly as the screen behind him lit up with projections and sales data. The presentation had begun. His voice cut through the silence, measured, deep, practiced. Every word efficient, every graph a victory. He laid out quarterly gains, market penetration, property acquisition like a war general surveying the field. Faces around the table nodded in approval, but beneath his polished tone, Salis felt the weight, not just of the company, of the name, the legacy, the walls that looked like windows but didn't open. He belonged here, but more and more it felt like a life lived behind glass. His voice continued, smooth and commanding. But somewhere between revenue margins and real estate projections, his mind slipped, backward, away from the boardroom, away from the weight. Flashback. College days. Back then, the air always smelled like grass and cheap beer. Berkeley, sophomore year, late autumn. The trees blazed gold and red, and Salis remembered laughing, not the polite kind he wore at fundraisers, but deep, stupid, belly-aching laughter. Kevin Maddox was his roommate and best friend, loud, brilliant, unapologetically himself. Kevin played vinyls too loud and quoted Baldwin like scripture. He made their dorm room feel like a space that breathed. Salis remembered thinking, this is freedom. No suits, no shadow of the Hastings name, just two guys, dreaming out loud in a room that smelled like pizza and ambition. Then came Thanksgiving. Salis had invited Kevin home, half out of loyalty, half because he didn't want to return to that house alone. Kevin had hesitated, but eventually agreed. Long as your folks don't mind a poor black kid crashing the estate, he joked. They both laughed. Salis didn't realize how close to the truth it was. Back at the estate, his home. Everything was manicured, the lawns, the dinnerware, even the conversations. Salis's father, Richard Hasting, had given Kevin a cold smile and one too many questions. Where are your parents from? What did you say your father does again? Oh, a scholarship? The word hit the table like a slur. Kevin kept his cool, he always did, smiled politely, thanked them for dinner. But Salis could see it. The distance, the polite rejection wrapped in country club manners. Later that night, as they walked past the fire pit near the tennis court, Kevin had said, man, this place is beautiful, but it don't want me here. Salis didn't know what to say. Back to present, boardroom. A polite cough snapped him back to now. The projector light flickered as a VP asked a question. Salis answered it like a machine. The numbers kept moving, but his thoughts stayed behind. Kevin was right. The estate didn't want him there. It never would, and Salis, he hadn't defended him. Not really. He hadn't known how. Back then, his voice had volume but no weight. He was the prince, not the king. All title, no power. And now he wondered if Kevin had it better. Kevin worked in public education, last he checked, ran a community initiative in Oakland. Modest place, modest life, but free, real. Probably full of laughter and vinyl records and friends who didn't measure your worth by your zip code. Salis cleared his throat, pushed the thought down, pressed next slide. The future waited, even if it wasn't the one he wanted. Days blurred by, he took a deep breath. Salis didn't want to be there. Another gala, another room of empty laughter and inflated egos. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen fireworks, trying too hard to impress. Waiters floated around with champagne flutes and smoked salmon, like they were delivering news from God. The whole place smelled like money and old perfume. He adjusted the cufflinks his father gave him. Engraved, antique, heavy. Presence is everything, Salis, his father always said. You don't build empires from the office, you build them in the room. So here he was, suit pressed, smile loaded, pretending not to hate it. He stood near the bar, glass in hand, letting the voices blur together. Until her laugh cut through the noise. Not loud, not forced, just real, warm. He turned and there she was, Kiara Wright, sun-kissed skin. A soft midsection in a deep green dress that didn't care about trends. Her hair framed her face like it had better things to do than behave. Her eyes sparkled with life, not performance. She was standing with a friend, casually mocking the wine descriptions on the tasting cards. Hints of stone fruit and existential dread, she whispered with a smirk. Salis smiled despite himself. He waited for a lull, then stepped in. I think that was my favorite vintage, the one that pairs well with generational disappointment. Kiara looked at him. Slow blink. Smile tugged at her lips. Then, cute. But I've already got a full glass and an exit plan, so. She turned back to her friend, dismissed. Not rudely, just effortlessly. Salis stood there, a little stunned. That never happened to him, ever. He wasn't used to being background noise. And now he couldn't stop watching her. The way she gestured when she talked. The way her laughter rolled out of her without checking to see if the room approved. She was real in a way nothing around him was. Real in a way he hadn't felt since Kevin. Maybe not even then. He didn't know her name yet, but she already had his full attention. Later that night, still at the gala, Salis didn't chase her. That wasn't his style. But his eyes kept drifting, past donors, execs, even a senator, to her. Always back to her. She moved through the room like she didn't owe it anything. Like she wasn't trying to impress, just observing, amused. Salis watched her and felt something unravel. She reminded him of Jazz, free, warm, unpredictable. He told himself he wasn't going to approach again. Then she caught him looking. Their eyes locked. Kiara raised one eyebrow, almost like a dare. Then she turned and strolled toward the far side of the ballroom, toward the quieter corner near the art exhibit. Not fast, not slow, just enough to leave a door open. He followed. Quiet corner, near the abstracts. Kiara stood in front of a chaotic painting of smeared reds and blacks, swirling like an argument frozen mid-fight. I like this one, she said, sensing him behind her. Because it's angry? Salis asked. She smiled. Because it's honest. Most of this place feels fake. He didn't know whether she meant the gala or the painting. Maybe both. I'm Salis, he offered, standing beside her now. And yeah, it's all pretty fake. That's the point. She turned toward him slightly. Kiara. And if you know it's fake, why keep showing up? He glanced around the room. Polished teeth, forced laughs, hollow toasts. Because leaving would raise questions, he said. And I'm not ready to answer them. That made her pause, really look at him. That's the most honest thing I've heard all night. They talked for an hour. About everything but real estate and society. About books, old music, weird dreams, and the small rebellions that keep you sane. About her work in the arts, her love of the beach, her habit of people watching just to invent fake backstories for strangers. She teased him, gently, sharply, enough to test his edges. He surprised her, more thoughtful than she expected, less arrogant, still very much from that world, but aware enough to feel the edges of its trap. When the gala lights dimmed and guests began collecting their coats, she picked up her clutch. This was fun, she said, but I don't do charity auctions and hedge fund small talk regularly. So don't go looking for me at the next one. I won't, he said. But I'll still be looking. She laughed. That laugh again. Soft, real. She wrote her number on the back of his program and handed it to him with a wink. Just don't waste my time, Salis. Then she walked out, heels clicking like punctuation. He stood there staring after her, the echo of her presence louder than the music. They didn't fall fast. They fell carefully, quietly, like people who knew the walls were listening. After the gala, he texted her 2 days later. Not that night, he didn't want to seem desperate. He crafted the message, erased it twice, then finally just said, "I've been thinking about existential wine and angry art. Coffee?" She replied an hour later, "Only if there's actual coffee, and no suits." Their first meeting wasn't at a cafe. It was a bookstore on the edge of town, independent, black-owned, full of creaky floors and the smell of old paper. He showed up in jeans and a hoodie. She smirked at the sight. "You look like someone doing undercover work," she teased. "Maybe I am," he said, only half joking. They sat in the poetry aisle for 2 hours. No one recognized him. No one cared. For the first time in years, Salis felt like just a man, not an heir, not a brand. Just a man, leaning in to hear a woman read Audre Lorde out loud and laugh at her own commentary. After that, it became their rhythm. Late nights, quiet places, long drives to nowhere, just to talk in parked cars. When things got more serious, he gave her a key to the beach house, his private escape on the coast. They'd meet there on weekends. No suits, no clocks. She'd show up in hoodies and sandals, carrying bags of snacks and playlists. He'd bring wine and stress and let her kiss the tension off his jaw. They'd make love to the sound of crashing waves and wake up with the curtains wide open, sunlight painting their skin gold. It was beautiful, and it was stolen. One morning at the beach house, she stood on the deck, her twist out wild from sleep, sipping coffee in his button-down shirt. Salis came up behind her, shirtless, linen pants low on his hips. He wrapped his arms around her waist, pressed his face into the curve of her neck. "This place feels like a lie," she said softly. He didn't answer right away. Then, "I know." She turned in his arms. "I'm not ashamed of who I am, Salis. But you're afraid to be seen with me." His jaw tensed. "Not of you. Of what they'll do to us." She nodded. That was fair. That was real. But it didn't make it her less. They never said "I love you." Not yet. But it was there, in a way she cooked for him without asking. In the way he held her like she was the only real thing in his life. Still, every goodbye felt heavier. And deep down, they both knew, love kept in the shadows can't grow roots. At the beach house, dusk. The sun was sinking low, dragging streaks of amber and indigo across the sky. Waves rolled in, slow and steady, smoothing out the shore like a lullaby. The air smelled of salt and fading heat. Salis and Kiara sat side by side on a weathered blanket near the edge of the dunes. He was shirtless again, linen pants rolled to his calves, a bottle of wine between them. She had her legs curled beneath her, hoodie sleeves pulled over her hands, curls dancing in the breeze. They weren't laughing tonight, just watching the horizon. He broke the silence first. "You ever see someone clearly, but only in hindsight?" he asked, voice low. Kiara turned to him. "Like who?" He took a breath. "My dad. And Kevin, that Thanksgiving." She waited, gave him space. "I brought my best friend home thinking it wouldn't matter. He was brilliant, funny as hell, made Dean's List every semester. But the second my father found out Kevin was black, there on a scholarship, something changed." His jaw tightened. I saw it in his eyes, disgust he didn't bother to hide, polite but cutting, like Kevin had trespassed by being in our house. Kiara shook her head slowly. "And you didn't see it before that?" "No." He looked down at his hands. "I was blind to it, or maybe I didn't want to see it." She studied him. Not cruel, but honest. "How were you that clueless?" He didn't flinch. He deserved that. "Because I didn't grow up with my father," he said finally. "I grew up around him. He barked orders, told me where to be, what to wear, who to shake hands with. We didn't talk, not like normal families." A long pause. "I wasn't even part of the company until I graduated." He didn't trust me, said I was too soft, too emotional. He only brought me in after my uncle passed, and he had no one left he could control. Kiara looked away, lips pressed into a line. And now? He exhaled, voice raw. Now I'm falling for you, and I don't know what the hell to do. He looked at her fully. No mask. I know how my family sees you. I know how dangerous that is. But I can't pretend this doesn't matter to me. You don't matter to me. She didn't speak right away, just reached over, slid her fingers through his. Her eyes shimmered, but her grip was firm. Then stop pretending, she said. He nodded, slow and broken. The waves kept rolling in, soft and cruel. The sky darkened around them. And for a little while longer, they just sat there, holding hands on borrowed time. Little did Salis know, his father was watching. Thomas Hasting never confronted directly. That wasn't his way. He preferred distance, observation, control. He had Salis followed. First by a junior associate from the company, then a private firm when things became concerning. Reports came in, dinners outside the city, long weekends at the coastal property, frequent visits from an unfamiliar woman. When the photos landed on his desk, Salis, shirtless on the beach, Kiara in his arms, laughing. Thomas didn't raise his voice. He just stared. Amber-toned skin, natural hair, not his kind. His jaw clenched until his teeth ached. So that's what's been distracting him. Thomas made a few calls. A quiet background check. A discreet visit to Kiara's family home. No threats, just reminders of how fragile stability could be. A private dinner with the Langford family. Solid bloodline, old money, suitable daughter, freshly graduated from Stanford Business. It was time to put Salis back in line. To remind him that his life didn't belong to him. It belonged to the name, to the company, to the plan. The beach house, one last night. Salis stood at the edge of the porch, eyes on the ocean. The moon was high and full, silver light shimmering off the tide. He wore only sweatpants, curls still damp from a swim. Kiara stepped out, hoodie zipped halfway, barefoot, holding 2 mugs of tea. He didn't turn when she joined him. I know he knows, Salis said quietly. My father. He's been watching me. Kiara's eyes tightened. She handed him a mug, leaned against the railing beside him. He hasn't come for you yet, she said. Salis shook his head. He will. This isn't a man who tolerates cracks in the surface. He took a long sip, then set the mug down. I've made my decision. I'm going public. You and me. No hiding, no excuses. Kiara stared at him, the ocean wind tugging at her curls. You sure? No, he said. I'm terrified. But I'm done being someone I don't recognize just to keep a seat at a table I hate. She smiled, small but real. Then let's make this night count, she whispered. He turned to her fully, placed a hand on her cheek. I don't know how long we'll have once the storm hits, he said. But I want this moment to be ours, before everything falls apart. She nodded. And just like that, the rest of the world faded. They made love slowly, like they were memorizing each other cell by cell. After, they laid tangled in the sheets, limbs warm, hearts louder than the waves. Neither said it, but they both felt it. This was the last night before everything changed. The Hasting estate was quiet. Too quiet, like a museum after hours. Marble floors, oil paintings, a grand chandelier above the foyer that had watched 3 generations of Hastings pretend they were kings. Salis walked in without being announced. He didn't need to be. He found Thomas Hasting in the study, seated behind the massive oak desk that might as well have been a throne. Neat scotch in hand. Eyes sharp, unreadable. A fire flickered behind him, like it was trying to eavesdrop. Thomas didn't look up right away. He finished his sip first. Then, so, you've made a decision. Salis stood across from him. No suit, no tie, just a plain shirt, jacket, and the kind of stillness that comes right before a storm. I have, Salis said. Thomas set the glass down with care. You should know. I've already taken steps to correct your Deviation. There's a dinner next week with the Langfords. She's respectable, educated, prepared to carry the Hasting name properly. Salis's jaw tightened. I'm not showing up. Thomas's smile didn't reach his eyes. You don't have a choice. I do. You just don't like that I'm finally using it. Then Thomas stood, slowly. Came around the desk. He didn't yell, didn't raise a hand. He didn't need to. He weaponized silence. You've forgotten what we are, Thomas said. You think this company, this family name, survives on feelings? On impulse? We survive on structure, on alliances, on knowing our place in the hierarchy. Salis stared at him. You mean on control, on fear? Thomas didn't blink. On legacy. Something you clearly don't value anymore. Salis stepped forward now, closer than he'd ever dared before. When I was 10, you told me not to cry at my grandfather's funeral. You said, Hastings don't mourn, we move forward. I remember. Well, I'm done moving forward with you. I'm not ashamed of her. I'm ashamed I didn't stand up to you sooner. Thomas's eyes turned to ice. She will ruin you. No, Salis said, voice flat. You did that years ago. She's just the first real thing I've had since. A silence fell. Sick, sharp, final. Thomas leaned in, voice quiet and lethal. If she stays, she will suffer. Her family will suffer. You think love protects people, Salis? Love makes them targets. Salis didn't flinch, but something shifted in his eyes. I'm not afraid of you anymore, he said. He turned and walked out, every step echoing through the hollow house like a declaration. Thomas Hasting never yelled. He simply made phone calls. 3, to be exact. Call 1 was to the head of a private security firm, discreet, loyal, well compensated. Get a message to her. No paper trail. Speak to her father directly. Let them know what's at stake. Call 2 was to the bank. Freeze the right small business line. Routine audit. Delay approval on their refinance. Just long enough to cause discomfort. Call 3 was to a friend at the local university board. I heard she's teaching part-time. Her course is off-book. Doesn't align with curriculum standards. You understand. He never once mentioned her name. Didn't have to. He knew exactly how to cut someone out without leaving a mark. It had been 2 weeks since the confrontation. Salis thought he'd bought time. He thought maybe, just maybe, he'd won. He and Kiara had planned to meet at the beach house. She sent a text that morning. Be there by sunset. I'm bringing wine and trouble. He grinned when he saw it. He set out clean linens, opened all the windows, stocked the fridge. He even lit the candles she liked, earthy, not floral. No more hiding, no more halves. But the sun set, and she didn't come. Beach house, later that night. The house was still, too still. Her things were gone. Toothbrush, scarf, even the book she'd left dog-eared on the nightstand. No note, no call, no text. He tried her phone, straight to voicemail. He drove to the edge of the beach, barefoot in the sand, linen pants clinging to wet legs. His olive-toned chest heaved with panic, curls wild in the sea breeze. His eyes, those deep amber eyes, scanned the endless horizon. Nothing. He dropped to his knees in the wet sand, fists pounding the earth like it owed him answers. A curse ripped from his throat, raw and useless. The sun had long since dipped below the sea, but the chill felt personal now. She was gone, and deep down, beneath the rage and heartbreak, he already knew who was responsible. After she was gone, days passed, maybe weeks. Time lost shape at the beach house. Salis didn't go back to the city, didn't return calls, didn't check emails. He let the company spin without him, let the whispers build in boardrooms, let the world shrink to crashing waves and deafening silence. He slept on the couch, ate only when the headaches got too loud. Her hoodie still hung behind the bedroom door. He couldn't bring himself to touch it. He replayed everything, every laugh, every kiss, every second of their last night. Wondered what he missed, what he said wrong, what he didn't protect. And always the same haunting thought. She didn't leave. She was taken. The truth comes out. It started with a voicemail he didn't mean to check. From Kevin, of all people. Yo, I heard something. One of my guys said Kiara's contract was pulled. No warning, no reason. And her dad? His loan got shut down. Just like that. Something's off, man. You should dig. Salis sat up, the ache behind his eyes sharpening into rage. He called in a favor from an old contact in compliance. Quiet, off the record. Then he started digging. It didn't take long. He found bank freezes, phone records to security firms. The Langford dinner had been booked weeks in advance. One document did it, a memo forwarded from one of his father's assistants. A slip, a calendar note referencing a call with Wright family intermediary. Status handled. That word, handled. Alone in the study back at the estate. In the same study where Thomas Hasting had poured scotch like sermons, Salis stood alone. He stared at the fire. Not for warmth, for something to destroy. He held the printed email, read it once more. Status handled. So clean, so cold. The rage came slow. No outburst, no yelling, just a quiet certainty. This man had dismantled the only real thing in his life. Not for love, not for reason, for control. Silas had plans of his own. He returning back to his father world. The office hadn't changed. Still cold, modern, silent. The kind of place where ambition echoed louder than conversation. When Salis walked through the glass doors of Hasting Realtor, heads turned. He hadn't been seen in weeks. Whispers followed him down the hallway like shadows. He said nothing. Straight to the top floor. Straight to his father's office. The doors open. Thomas didn't look up when Salis entered. He was pouring scotch. Midday. About time, he muttered. I was beginning to think you'd gone soft for good. Salis stood tall, jaw tight. I'm back. Thomas turned, glass in hand. He gave his son a long, cold look. Then, let's get something straight. He circled him like a general inspecting a soldier. You embarrassed this family. You compromised this brand. You mistook lust for loyalty and nearly wrecked your future. Salis took it all, no reaction. You will meet Madison Langford this Friday. You will show up. You will smile. And you will remind the board why we kept you in line. Silence. Then Salis nodded once. Understood. Thomas smiled for the first time in weeks. Good. I knew you'd come around. You're a Hasting. It's in your blood. Later that day, Salis stood alone in the executive parking garage. He opened his phone, scrolled past old texts from Kiara, past photos, past pain. He sent 3 messages. One to Tasha Green, the company's VP of People, and the only executive who'd ever called his father out in a board meeting. One to Jared West, his cousin on the tech side. Brilliant, overlooked, and quietly furious at the family hierarchy. One to Victor Kim, longtime family lawyer, loyal but only to the truth. Each message said the same thing. Meet me tonight, discreetly, change is coming. They met that night at the beach house, Salis's last untouched space. He laid it all out. The blackmail, the manipulation, the way Thomas built an empire on silence, threats, and fear. I'm done playing prince to a rotten throne, Salis said, but I'm not burning it down. I want the company, but I want it clean. Tasha crossed her arms, eyes sharp. And if he finds out? Salis met her gaze. He won't, not until it's too late. Victor nodded slowly. You're going to need leverage. I've got it, Salis said. Emails, contracts, off-books dealings. He forgot I was watching him too. This was the beginning. He'd wear the suit. Smile for the cameras. Shake the Ford's hands. But beneath the surface, Salis was planting dynamite. The crown would still be his, but he'd take the king down first. Silas attended the dinner, a high-end restaurant in the city, dimly lit, gold accents, candlelight flickering off crystal and silver. The kind of place where business was sealed with Bordeaux, and betrayal wore cologne. At the round table near the private wine cellar sat Madison Ford, pristine in pearl earrings and a tasteful beige dress. Her father, Charles Ford, a steel-haired executive with a permanent smirk. Thomas Hasting, composed and lethal as ever, and Salis, boxed in by bloodlines and expectation. The air hummed with low piano and politeness. Glasses clinked. Waiters moved like ghosts. Madison was polite, poised, intelligent, and utterly distant. Her smile was professional, not warm. She asked the right questions, laughed at the right cues. It was a performance, and Salis knew it. They both were acting. Still, he played along. Until Thomas raised his glass, voice smooth as a dagger. To the future, the marriage between our two children will be grand, historic even. Salis froze mid-bite, fork suspended. His amber eyes flared, then shuddered. His tailored jacket felt like it was choking him. His throat tightened. The wine turned bitter on his tongue. "I see," he said, just two clipped syllables, baritone cold. Across the table, Charles Ford chuckled, as if a deal had already been signed. Madison's eyes flicked to Salis, then down to her plate. She knew too, he didn't want this either. A quiet hush fell over the table, as if the entire restaurant had sensed something sour in the air. But Thomas didn't notice, or didn't care. He pushed on, praising the merger potential, the press optics, the natural synergy of families with shared vision. Salis didn't respond. He stayed. He chewed, swallowed, nodded when necessary, but the light was gone from his face. Every word after that was clipped, clinical. He spoke just enough to avoid suspicion, but inside, something had snapped clean. This wasn't dinner. This was war and silk, and Thomas didn't even realize he'd already lost his grip. After the dinner, outside the restaurant, the valet pulled up with a silver sedan. Salis stood beside Madison, the crisp night air cutting through the polished facade of the evening. Inside, Thomas and Charles lingered with cigars, already toasting a future they thought was locked in. Madison didn't look at him right away. Her arms were folded, lips pressed tight. Then finally, "He really didn't tell you." Salis raised an eyebrow. "Tell me what?" "That this wasn't a proposal. It was a deal. I'm the dowry." Her voice was calm, but the bitterness ran deep. "I'm not stupid. I know my father's ambitions. But I didn't agree to be sold off like some final chess piece." Salis studied her face. Sharp, poised, but not cold. "You don't want this either," he said. "No," she replied. "But I know how people like them work. They don't offer, they assign." He hesitated, then asked, "Why tell me this?" She looked at him now, eyes steady. "Because I think you might actually be reckless enough to do something about it." She stepped into the waiting car, door closing like a clean ending. A week later, Salis sat in his office, early morning, alone, except for the flash drive in his hand. The same office his father insisted he earn. The same corner of power he was now using against him. He inserted the drive, opened the file. Email threads, transaction records, internal memos. Everything his team had gathered over the past week, thanks to Jared's backdoor access and Victor's careful parsing. It wasn't just about Kiara anymore. It was bigger. Evidence of off-book deals, tax dodges, undocumented fund transfers, small infractions on their own. Together, a reputation killer. He composed the message. To Board of Directors. Subject concerning financial irregularities. Immediate review recommended. No signature. Just a file attached. He hit send, then leaned back in his chair, heart steady, eyes sharp. This wasn't noise. This was his first shot, a silent detonation no one would see coming until the smoke curled under their doors. And he wasn't done. It started with a rumor. Tasha heard it from a gallery owner in Midtown. Jared confirmed it through a payment trail. Kiara's name attached to a freelance design contract, off-grid, under an alias. She was alive, safe, hiding. Salis didn't chase it. He didn't send a car or make a dramatic plea. Instead, he wrote a letter. By hand. On plain paper. No seal, no logo, just his words. Kiara. I know I have no right to ask anything of you. Not after what I let happen. Not after how I failed to protect what we built. But I'm not done. I'm playing a game I may not survive. Not because I'm weak, but because he's dangerous. I miss you. But this isn't about that. This is about justice. If you know anyone who would stand with me, anyone he's hurt, I'm listening. I'm ready. Forgive me or don't. But please help me end this. He sealed the envelope and sent it via a trusted messenger with no return address. Then he waited. 4 days later, a package arrived. No note, just a list. 6 names, each with a small mark next to it. Different symbols, no explanation. A former VP who vanished after a resignation. A whistleblower who filed a claim and then disappeared from real estate altogether. A journalist whose exposé was pulled at the last minute. A woman from HR who walked away mid-promotion. An old client who lost everything in a mysterious deal collapse. And Kiara's former mentor, someone Salis vaguely remembered from a gala years back. Someone who had once praised Kiara's spirit and suddenly went silent. At the bottom of the list, scribbled in quick pen, they all have reasons to burn him. But most of all, they want to be heard. No signature. But he didn't need one. He held the page like a map. Not to safety. To the end of the kingdom. The boardroom was quiet, but not the usual reverent kind. It was the quiet that comes before a break. Thomas Hasting adjusted his cufflinks with practiced calm, but his eyes flicked across the room like a man scanning for threats. He could feel it, the shift. The usual deference was gone, replaced with skepticism, concern, doubt. One of the senior board members cleared his throat. Thomas, we've been receiving correspondence, encrypted emails, anonymous, containing documents from the mid-90s to early 2000s. Thomas kept his expression still. And? Old acquisitions, side deals, a shell corporation routed through Dubai. Your name's on every dotted line. He offered a dry, clipped chuckle. Those are decades old. If anything, they show just how long we've been ahead of the curve. The members didn't smile. These aren't achievements, another said. They're liabilities, unreported, possibly illegal. We're being asked to explain decisions that predate even your son's time here. That caught Thomas off guard. Salis? No. He was barely out of middle school when those deals were inked. His mind raced. Could it be a competitor? Someone hacking their systems? A hostile takeover brewing? No. The information was too specific, too surgical. Someone was targeting him, not the company. Behind closed doors back in his office, Thomas stood at the massive windows, fists clenched behind his back. The skyline looked like a losing battlefield. He'd always known how to win by staying 10 moves ahead, but now someone had pulled out an old game board and was forcing him to play blind. He turned to his assistant. I want our system scanned. I want our emails traced. I want to know who's inside my walls. The assistant nodded and scurried off. Thomas poured himself a drink. The hand holding the glass trembled for just a second before he steadied it. He sipped. He watched the city like it owed him answers. And in his chest, for the first time in years, not of real fear. 3 days later. The email's still coming. No subject lines, no signatures, just attachments. Old contracts, meeting transcripts, back-channel communications from decades ago. Some were from the era when Thomas's father ran the company. But Thomas's name was always somewhere, signed, CC'd, approving quietly from the wings. And every file landed not just in his inbox, but in the inboxes of every board member. 3 days of silence from IT. 3 days of no answers. 3 days of growing whispers, side glances, and long pauses at the end of board meetings. Thomas paced the length of his office like a caged animal. His voice, once a controlled baritone, had grown sharp, frayed. You mean to tell me no one knows who's doing this? No digital signature? No breach? Nothing? His CTO fumbled for words. It's like they're using air-gapped relays. Whoever this is, they're professionals. This is an inside job, Thomas snarled. Someone who knows exactly where the bones are buried. He started naming names. Old employees, terminated contractors, even a former partner who left quietly with a golden parachute. Each theory more desperate than the last. The boardroom shift. Later that week, during a scheduled quarterly review, the board's tone changed. What started as polite concern turned colder, more formal. Thomas, the chairwoman said carefully, there's talk in the media about leadership transparency. The emails haven't leaked yet, but we need to prepare for if they do. Prepare? He repeated. We bury it. That's how we prepare. But her expression was unchanged. We've received a proposal that perhaps it's time for you to take a limited sabbatical. Publicly, of course. Health, legacy, the usual script. Thomas laughed. A sharp, mirthless sound. You think I'll step down? After building this company into what it is? She didn't flinch. We think the company needs to survive whatever this is, with or without you. Salis watches quietly. Across the table, Salis said nothing. He listened, made notes, maintained the calm of a man who had finally stopped begging for a seat and started building his own table. He didn't pretend to defend his father. That would raise suspicion. He didn't celebrate either. That would be obvious. He just sat there, unreadable, the dutiful son with hollow eyes. And that silence burned hotter than any outburst, because Thomas noticed it. And for the first time, he truly began to wonder. Is it him? Eastside Cafe off the grid was the kind of cafe where no one asked names and everyone wore headphones. Dim lights, chipped mugs, quiet hum of jazz on vinyl. Salis sat in the back, hoodie up, no entourage, no car waiting outside. Just a man trying not to look like who he was. Across from him sat Elena Cruz, mid-40s, sharp-eyed, no frills. A leather notebook sat between them like a loaded gun. She didn't smile, she didn't blink much either. Didn't think a Hasting would ever ask me for a meeting, she said, stirring her tea slowly. Last time I got close to the truth, 3 sponsors dropped me in 48 hours, and my editor locked my article in a vault. Salis nodded. I read it, or what's left of it. What's left of it is a headline and a bunch of black bars. He slid a thin folder across the table. No logo, no seal. Inside, documents, clean and traceable, proof of what she tried to publish, plus new names. New angles. Her eyes scanned the pages, sharp as ever. Then she looked up. Why now? Why you? Because I used to think I had a future with that name, Salis said quietly. Now, I just want to make sure it stops hurting people. Elena leaned back, folded her arms. You're not doing this for redemption. You're doing this for blood. I'm doing it for truth. The blood just comes with it. A long silence. Then she tapped the notebook. You give me permission to go public with this? And I'll blow the doors off the house your father built. But you better be ready, Salis. There won't be any walking this back. I don't want to walk it back, he said. I want it to burn. Elena nodded once. Not approval, just alignment. Thomas was on the phone when it hit him. An instinct, a ripple in the current. His assistant buzzed in. Sir, you might want to see this. He clicked the email. Subject, pre-embargo notice, Elena Cruz, feature story set to run at midnight. Attached, a media inquiry from a major online investigative journal. Attached were questions he'd hoped were buried forever. Can the Hasting Corporation confirm your role in the 2001 Baywood zoning cover-up? What was your involvement in the off-record eviction cases in Easton Park? Why did 3 whistleblowers disappear within months of filing complaints against Hasting Realtor Holdings? Thomas's chest tightened. He hadn't heard Elena Cruz's name in over a decade. He made sure of that. He dropped the phone on his desk and barked for his PR team. Get legal, get Ford, get everyone who owes us a favor on the line. This thing dies tonight. But he already knew. It was too clean, too fast, too wide. Someone was feeding her from inside. His stomach twisted. Thomas whispered Salis. At 12:01 a.m., the article went live. Headline, Buried Deeds. Inside the Hasting Empire's pattern of suppression, silence, and systemic abuse. Within minutes, it hit every newsfeed, every phone, every inbox across the city's real estate, legal, and political circles. The documents were there. The paper trail. First-hand accounts. Redacted files, now unredacted. Quotes from ex-employees, former clients, legal experts. And not just the company. Thomas Hasting himself named directly. Quiet kingmaker, shadow architect, manipulator. The article ended with one line. When those closest to power break their silence, the silence breaks everything. Salis sat alone at the beach house, the screen of his laptop glowing soft in the dark. He read every word. He didn't smile, didn't celebrate. He just leaned back, closed his eyes, and breathed. The next morning, flashbulbs exploded as Thomas walked into the building. Board members weren't in their offices. They were in conference. Reporters waited outside the gate. Investors wanted emergency calls. The firm's public value began to shake on the hour. Inside, Thomas gripped the railing of his office window. Everything he had built, his rules, his control, his silence, was slipping through his fingers like ash. He turned from the window and picked up the phone. "Get my son in here, now." The door shut behind Salis with a heavy click. Across the room, Thomas stood at the window, his back turned, posture rigid. His reflection in the glass was pale, tight-lipped, a man used to winning, now watching the empire crack around him. "I should have known it was you," Thomas said, voice quiet but laced with venom. Salis didn't move. "I didn't hide it." "No. You just waited. You smiled. You played the part. Then you gutted me in front of the entire goddamn industry." Salis stepped closer. Slow. Calm. "You did that to yourself. I just made sure everyone else saw it." Thomas turned, eyes bloodshot. "You think this makes you noble? A hero?" "I don't care what it makes me," Salis said. "I care that it's over." "Over?" Thomas scoffed. "You think the board will trust you after this? You think dragging your family's name through the mud will win you the throne?" "I'm not trying to win a throne," Salis said, voice steady. "I'm trying to burn the rot out of it." They stood face to face now. Same height, same jawline, same fire, but pointed in opposite directions. "You erased people. You destroyed lives. You threatened the woman I—" He caught himself, swallowed it. "Then, you made power the only thing worth having." Thomas's lips curled. "And what do you think built all this? Sent you to those schools? Gave you that beach house you play rebel in?" "Power built it, Salis. Your name is worth something because I made it that way." Salis nodded slowly. "Then maybe it's time that name died." Silence. Real, suffocating silence. Then Thomas stepped forward, voice low. "You'd really risk everything for her?" Salis didn't hesitate. "I already did." Thomas walked to the desk, poured himself a drink with shaking hands, took a slow sip. "You think they won't come for you next?" he said. "You think the wolves stop at the first drop of blood?" "Let them come," Salis said. "At least I won't be hiding behind glass and ghosts." Thomas laughed once, bitter, alone. "You're not like me," he said. "I know," Salis said. "That's the only reason I can live with myself." Salis turned and walked out, leaving the office door wide open behind him, letting the hallway hear the silence. As he stepped into the elevator, phone buzzing with press calls and board updates, he looked down at the lock screen. A new message. From Kiara. "You did it. I see you." His reflection in the elevator door looked the same, but the man behind it wasn't his father's son anymore. He was free. Pre-dawn. Federal vehicles lined the circular driveway of the Hasting estate, sleek black SUVs, red and blue lights slicing through the cold morning mist. Agents moved with grim efficiency. Flashlights cut through marble halls and curated stillness. In his robe, Thomas Hasting stood in the foyer, defiant but hollow-eyed. His lawyer shouted, but it didn't matter. The arrest warrant was ironclad. Fraud, obstruction, conspiracy, coercion. Years of intimidation and quiet sabotage unwound in one morning raid. At the office, agents swept through floors like a virus. The name Hasting Realtor no longer meant untouchable. Files were seized, drives copied, whispers turned to gasps. By noon, Thomas was in cuffs. Cameras caught him ducking his head, face drained, jaw tight with rage. The judge denied bond, citing his global connections and offshore holdings. Flight risk. The man who ruled behind closed doors would now sleep under fluorescent lights. That night, Salis stood alone in his high-rise apartment, watching the city blink below him. He opened his phone. No headlines, no inbox, just one message. To Kiara. Beach next week. No suits, just us. He hit send. Then turned back to the dark window, letting go of everything he'd inherited but never wanted. The next morning was tense. Every board member was seated. No smiles, no pleasantries. The chairwoman started. The optics are catastrophic. Our stock has dipped 15 points in 24 hours. Another member chimed in. Your involvement with the media leak, intentional or not, destabilized the company. We need continuity, not chaos. Salis sat still, hands folded. Then fire me. Silence. The chairwoman raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? Fire me, Salis repeated. If you think I'm a threat, I'll walk. But if you want to rebuild this place into something honest, I'm the only one in this room who didn't spend the last 20 years looking the other way. Another long silence. Then the oldest member spoke up, gravel-voiced and blunt. Keep him on, temporary CEO. We need the public to see accountability. Then we evaluate. A split vote, but Salis stayed, for now. Not to hold the throne, but to dismantle it properly. Salis visits his father at the county detention center. Just father and son, separated by a steel table and bulletproof glass. Thomas looked worse, skin sallow, hands twitchy, still wearing the arrogance like a second skin, but it hung looser now. You came to gloat, he muttered. Salis shook his head. No, I came to say goodbye. Thomas scoffed. You think you've won? There's no winning in this, Salis said. There's only surviving, you made sure of that. Thomas leaned forward. You were nothing without me. I was nothing because of you. They sat in silence. Then Salis stood. This is the last time we speak. You're no longer my father. You're just another man who broke everything he touched and called it strength. He left without waiting for a response. Salis at the beach, wind in his curls, linen shirt loose, eyes on the horizon. Footsteps approach from behind. He turns. Kiara. No words, just a long, quiet look. At the beach. The wind rolled in soft and warm, the kind that didn't sting. It whispered. Tide curled along the shore in lazy rhythm. The beach was empty, except for him. Salis stood barefoot in the sand, linen shirt open, pants rolled up, the sea breeze playing with his hair. His chest rose and fell unevenly. His eyes searched the horizon, and then she was there. Kiara, walking slowly toward him. No makeup, no performance, just herself. Sun-kissed, calm, watching him the way no one else ever did. She saw the tears. He didn't hide them. When she reached him, she didn't speak. She just leaned in, kissed him slow. Gentle at first, then deeper, fuller, like she was anchoring him back to earth. He pulled back slightly, breath caught. I love you, he whispered. She smiled, eyes glassy but steady. I love you too. He laughed under his breath, half joy, half disbelief. Where do we go from here? She brushed her thumb across his cheek. Anywhere you want. They didn't talk much those first few days. They didn't have to. The beach house became a cocoon. Mornings were quiet breakfasts on the porch. Afternoons spent stretched across blankets, reading, napping, fingers tangled together. Nights filled with slow jazz, warm wine, and bodies finding rhythm again. They swam, they cooked, they danced barefoot in the kitchen. No boardrooms. No headlines, no legacy, just them. Two people who had survived the storm, now learning how to live again, together. Back in the city, the skyline rose in front of them as they crossed the bridge back into downtown. The chaos was still there. Horns, glass towers, news tickers, with headlines still bearing the Hasting name. But it all felt different now. They weren't coming back to play the old game. They were here to start their own. A few weeks later, Salis and Kiara stood on the rooftop of an old industrial building in a quiet part of the city. Neglected, but full of potential. He turned to her, eyes steady. I don't want to carry that name the same way he did, he said. But I won't erase it either. I want to redefine it. rebuild it, something with both our fingerprints on it. He reached into his coat pocket and unfolded a design mock-up, Wright and Hasting Properties. Clean, bold, a logo with balance. Be my partner, he said, not just in the company. In the future, this would be ours. No boardroom ghosts, no inherited corruption. Just something real, something earned. Kiara looked at the mock-up, then at him. So long as there's room for color, she said, smirking. And no marble floors. I want plants, art, music, a place people walk into and feel like they belong. He grinned. Then that's what we build. They shook hands like partners, then leaned in like lovers. 1 year later, glass door swung open, a modest but modern office, the name etched in brass above the entrance. Wright plus Hasting Properties Real Estate, Real People. Inside, Kiara laughed with a young couple holding teas. Salis stood at the front desk, sleeves rolled up, clipboard in hand. No assistants, no handlers, just them, doing it right. That evening, they stood on the rooftop terrace of their new office. Wright plus Hasting Properties. The sun was setting behind the city skyline, painting the sky in honey and fire. Kiara leaned against the railing, wind playing in her curls. Salis stood behind her, quiet, thoughtful. Are you ready? He asked softly. She glanced back, teasing. Ready for what? He turned her fully toward him, then dropped to one knee. A small box in his hand, a question trembling in his voice. Are you ready for us to spend the rest of our lives together? Her breath caught. Tears instantly welled in her eyes. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes. He slipped the ring on her finger and stood, laughing as she threw her arms around him. He lifted her off the ground and spun her around, joy crashing out of him for the first time in years. Be careful, she laughed, suddenly tense. You might hurt the baby. He froze, mid-spin, set her down slowly, eyes wide. What? What did you say? Kiara smiled through tears, rested a hand on her belly. In 7.5 months, you're going to be a daddy. Salis stumbled back a half step, speechless. Then he stepped forward, kissed her. Long, fierce. Then knelt again, this time to press his lips gently to her stomach. A new kind of reverence in his voice. We need to be married before the baby comes. Kiara laughed through her tears. Why, you suddenly traditional now? He stood, held her face in his hands. Because our child deserves the Hasting inheritance. Even if the name is worthless, we'll make it mean something. Something better, she nodded. Then let's build it, together, for them. The wind picked up. The city stretched out before them. And for the first time, the name didn't feel like a weight. It felt like a promise. The end. Hope you enjoyed this wonderful story by Green Tea Tales. Help our channel to grow with likes, shares, and subscribes. Thank you.